he was state-of-the-art in law enforcement technology.
You called for backup?
But the system thinks he's become too independent, too unpredictable, too human.
We have a warrant out for the arrest of RoboCop.
Now, the system's out to get him. Because he's fighting for the people.
How may I help you, officer?
By resisting arrest.
You're not allowed to pick the movies anymore. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Podcast Part 3, the Part 3 podcast. I'm Sam, and I'm here with everyone's favorite splatterpunk, Will Morey.
That's right.
We are finally doing a movie that isn't a third Halloween. We're finally out of the long and winding road of Michael Myers, and it was Will's pick for his birthday, and I let him pick. And I should have known better, because now we're going to talk about RoboCop 3.
Our company's going bankrupt, so we have to turn it into a toyetic sequel, part 3.
Kids, ask your parents what Orion was, and depending on what kind of parent you have, they're going to say that's the company that made Dances with Wolves, or they're going to say that's the company that made RoboCop 3.
Or UHF.
Notice that all of these movies are from the early 90s, because this is a company that very famously went hella bankrupt. And RoboCop 3 was definitely a primary casualty of that bankruptcy.
Well, it was supposed to come out a year earlier, too, in 1992, as opposed to 1993, and Orion's financial troubles kept it in the vault for a whole year. So
I want to see when in 93 this hit theaters.
Oh, I can tell you. It hit theaters at the beginning, like early of November, because I took all my friends to see it November 20th for my birthday.
Everyone still able to go see Jurassic Park in theaters in November of 1993, but
yeah. Yep.
I mean, I'm in no position to judge. I took all my friends to see the 1998 Godzilla, so...
Well, you know,
I was young and innocent. So this is, for those of... to recap briefly the first two RoboCops. The original RoboCop is... It is an absolute classic.
100%.
It is funny, it is violent, it is wonderfully satirical. It's directed by Paul Verhoeven, who also directed Total Recall. He directed Basic Instinct. He directed Showgirls, and he directed Starship Troopers, of course.
Of course.
But RoboCop is, of course, the story of a police officer named Murphy in a not-too-distant future crime-ridden Detroit, which is on the verge of being converted into New Delta City, which is... being built by OCP, Omni Consumer Products, big evil corporation that's got its fingers in just about everything. And they get the idea when Murphy is gunned down by a crime boss to turn him into the ultimate, the future of law enforcement. He is RoboCop. But at the same time, deep down inside, he's still Murphy. And so he grapples with humanity, all while taking down the crime bosses and the corrupt corporate overlords of Detroit. And then in the second movie, he does basically the same thing, but the crime boss turns into a robot at the end, and he fights them too.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I am selling it short. I would say I can safely say that RoboCop is easily one of your favorite movies, and high up there for me. It's absolutely, if you have not seen RoboCop 1 and I'd say RoboCop 2 as well, check them out.
Absolutely.
They are
worth your time. High watermarks of 80s cinema, of action cinema, of science fiction cinema. And that first RoboCop movie is the reason why I'm doing the job I'm doing now. So
yeah, I think I think it's a movie that is still underappreciated. It's easy to sell it short. It looks cheesy. Just, RoboCop as a design is kind of looks like he's just designed to sell action figures, which is only the case with RoboCop 3.
And RoboCop 2 is fun if overstuffed and sort of retreads the same ground that RoboCop 1 trod.
Wait, Will, are you telling me a script by Frank Miller is both overstuffed and well-worn territory? I'm shocked. Shocked, I say.
Yes.
Frank Miller directed, wrote the
wrote.
script for RoboCop 2 and the story for RoboCop 3. RoboCop 2 was directed by Irvin Kershner, who directed the greatest Part 2 of all time, Empire Strikes Back. And this RoboCop 3 is directed by Fred Decker, who directed Night of the Creeps and The Monster Squad. And The Monster Squad is basically Stranger Things, but with more Dracula.
And a Frankenstein monster.
And a Frankenstein monster. And a Wolfman who's got nards.
Nards.
And a mummy and a creature from the Black Lagoon who all converge on a small town. Both of those are great. Fred Decker did some really classic, like 80s, horror, cheesy, knowingly funny horror. You'd think on paper he'd be perfect to do RoboCop, but this is the quintessential third movie that is a franchise that just doesn't give a shit anymore.
Oh, it is out of gas. I mean, and it's clear, like, some of the supporting players are just, like, done. Like, Nancy Allen looks like she'd rather be anywhere else.
Nancy Allen plays RoboCop's partner in the first two movies. I think, is she the only returning actor from the first two?
No, I mean, actually, a whole bunch of the supporting cast sort of returns.
You're right.
The police, the chief, and Johnson, one of the OCP guys.
Most importantly, Johnson, the Wedge Antilles of corporate toadies, who shows up in every one of these movies. That's the crazy thing is, like, this movie's out of gas. This movie could have been awesome. You could have made you could have kept going with RoboCop. And I think the problem was this feels tamer and less ambitious than the first two movies. And it's the first one that's PG-13, so it's not very violent. It sidelines RoboCop for a lot of it. The effects aren't as good. It's
so bizarre that they do that. I mean, and RoboCop 2 does this too, where it just knocks RoboCop out for an act, almost, maybe an act and a half, and it's like, and then the movie just spins its wheels, like, for a very long time, and it's like, why would you do this? It's like they couldn't figure out. They didn't want to do the emotional, like, he needs to figure out how to be a human again, which is what the first two movies are predicated upon. And it's like, so they were just like, we're not going to bother. We're just going to kind of, like, he kind of needs to figure out how to kind of be human, but we're going to half-ass that.
It's kind of like he's got a little bit of a thing where he, sort of is parental towards the kid. This movie, the first sign of trouble is this movie... Yeah. Has, like, a kid as the main character.
Right, a kid who's a RoboCop fan. From the jump, she has a RoboCop action figure, and she's very excited when RoboCop shows up.
And she's a computer whiz. She carries around a gigantic laptop for the entire movie.
And pretty nonplussed that her parents were just basically rounded up and executed.
Yes, that's the thing. There's some dark... For a movie that feels like it's trying to be the family-friendly... toyetic RoboCop, there's still a lot of dark stuff in it, so you can tell that this was like a more of an R-rated script at one point. So basically it's people are being rounded up and driven out of, like, old Detroit because OCP is finally going to build New Delta City, which they still haven't gotten around to.
And they've been talking about it for the first two movies all the time. That's their big plans, to rebuild the city.
So they're straight up, they have a bunch of, flunkies, like corporate, like Nazi types, the rehabs, led by a guy McDaggett, who is, I guess, the main villain, and I forget every time. I've seen RoboCop 3, that this is the
that
villain.
he's the bad guy. Yeah.
Because
Well, it's similar to kind of everything else in this movie that just half-asses it. He's the bad guy, but he has like a plot, it seems like, but it seems like the movie forgets about him, forgets what his plot is, forget that he's working
Yeah.
for the Japanese company that's trying to take over OCP.
Oh
it's
man,
just,
I do miss the 80s and early 90s era of Japanese corporations taking over. We're flexible. Pearl Harbor
Yeah.
didn't work out, so we got you with tape decks. Is again, kids, ask your grandparents at this point.
The interesting thing about these rehabs is that it because the movie is geared towards children, it flattens all the sort of nuances and more satirical
Yeah.
bite of the other movies, but inadvertently becomes more anti-capitalist because of that than the other two movies.
It's not subtle. This movie has multiple monologues about the evils of corporate capitalism. All the pieces are there for this to be an awesome movie. You're missing like a couple things that kind of kill it right out of the gate. You miss that R rating. You miss Peter Weller.
Yeah, that's huge.
And it's an odd thing to say, you think someone who's in like a big suit and is doing like kind of the role of a stuntman for a lot of it, you miss, but he is so good as RoboCop, and you notice that it's Robert John Burke plays him in this, and Robert John Burke is a kind of quintessential 90s, like, hey, that guy. I think he's in Tombstone, he's in From the Earth to the Moon. Like, he's a fine character actor, but he doesn't have that physicality that like he doesn't really know how to move his arms.
And I mean, from what I've read, it seems like the suit was from RoboCop 2. Like, they
Right.
didn't build a new suit for this, so it's like he can't really fit in it, and it shows. It's like he can't move that well, which maybe is why they sideline him for so long, is because the poor guy can't like actually get around.
It's some real Darth Vader in the first Star Wars. Like he clearly can't really see. He doesn't know what to do with his arms. This movie does put into perspective how good. And on a similar note, you really miss the old man.
That's right.
The head of OCP, played by a friend of the podcast, patron saint of Podcast Part 3, Connell Cochran himself, Dan O'Herlihy. You miss him. It's Rip Torn plays the CEO in this one, and who is just
every line he's shouting every single line. He's just trying to eat the scenery.
Everything's broader in this movie, which is weird because it's not like RoboCop and RoboCop 2 are all that subtle, but it is like McDaggett is he's very much the sniveling British, like that sort of villain, and Rip Torn is just Rip Torn cranked up to 11. And watching it, I was like, this is boring, but it's also odd. It's such an odd movie to me.
Yeah, well,
it's got an all-star cast.
Does CCH Pounder?
You got CCH Pounder. You got Stephen Root. You got Shane Black showing up as one of the cops. You got Jeff Garlin showing up.
That's right.
You got Daniel von Bargen, who was on Seinfeld. He was the one of the bad guys in Super Troopers, shows up.
Oh yeah.
The other guy, I looked him up. The other like dude that's like part of the little characters that work in the Resistance is Stanley Anderson, who was the president in both The Rock and Armageddon. So he's Michael Bay's president. You got Mako. You got Bradley Whitford. You got Jill Hennessy from Crossing Jordan. Everyone's here. It makes it all the more jarring because I don't really know the actress that played the little girl, because I just think in my mind it should be Danielle Harris.
Yeah, it really should be. Or what's her name from Waterworld?
Tina Majorino.
Tina Majorino, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a confounding movie because I actually think like the first act, pretty much right up until, well, not the first act, but really like kind of right at the end of the first action sequence, it's pretty solid and kind of cool.
I had the same thing. I have like the car stunts are great. Like Fred Dekker is a good director. He knows how to direct action, but it just, after that, the set pieces are all so stiff and boring.
Just nothing happens. Like I just don't understand. Like everyone, once RoboCop is out of commission in the movie, the movie stops dead and everyone just sort of sits around and waits for him to get back up online. and it's not like there's anything driving it. It's like we're told that they're going to tear down this section of Detroit to make way for Delta City, but it's like there doesn't seem to be any urgency to it.
This movie's like the definition of diminishing returns. RoboCop, it's an hour and 45 minutes. RoboCop doesn't show up until the 20-minute mark.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you get so much, and then he shows up by long jumping his squad car off a roof, landing in the middle of like a bunch of gang guys, and using his super gun to shoot a hole in the roof of his car, which I gotta imagine he gets yelled at a lot by.
I would assume.
Because all the other cops talk about him when he's not there, like he's just some guy. They're like, "Hey, hey, Lewis, where's your partner?"
Yeah.
Like, you mean the robot?
Get the cyborg cop. Like, hey, where's Murphy? He's just around.
Like, how come he doesn't come out for donuts?
He's not the donut type, and you're like, come on, this is called RoboCop 3. We know who that is.
Yeah, he's got accessories now. He's got
Yeah.
his wrist gun, which
And
I get,
a-
and a jetpack.
Jetpack, yeah. Does he shoot the missile, or was that just the toy? Because there's the middle barrel that shoots a missile, and I can't even remember. I watched it, last night, and I can't remember if he shoots the missile or not.
I think he shoots a missile to blow up the tank at the end.
That's right. Yeah.
You can't tell because it's the worst compositing effects I've ever seen in my life when
Yeah.
he's flying that jetpack.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell also that like the studio was running out of money. Like you can just tell, like it was they didn't have any money to do it what they wanted, or the budget kept getting slashed. Like it's very painfully obvious. And one of the funny things I think is that the sequences where you're actually in OCP and it's clear that OCP is running out of money, it feels like that was what was going on at Orion at the time.
Yeah, it's the OCP stuff is probably the strongest stuff in the movie. It's a shadow of the first two movies, but just like the one guy, he's like video conferencing with his wife. She's like, "Layoffs happen all the time, honey," as he's jumping out the window. Yeah, like there's some. I mean, again, it's that stuff's in there, but then it's got that like sanitized, kid friendly. Like RoboCop doesn't really kill anyone.
Right.
No one's wearing the squibs. There's like it lacks the. It's clear that it's that transition from like the really good R-rated violence of the 80s into that kind of safe violence of the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, and I have to wonder if in the development of this, if Terminator 2 kind of had something to do with it. I mean, it might have been too close, but it just seems like because Terminator 2 kind of started doing that pivot towards a child audience, that it seems like it may have impacted this a little bit.
Yeah, I wonder about that. You definitely had more as you got into the late 80s, more of these movies with kids in them. Your your Goonies, your Gremlins, having a kid along for the ride that the kid audiences could connect to. But I definitely think it was also just like, selling toys.
Yeah.
You got to sell your I think even more so than Terminator 2, I'm guessing the Ninja Turtles had a big hand in this.
That's probably true. That's probably right. Yeah, I mean, it's RoboCop is one of the handful of R-rated or franchises for adults that for inexplicable reasons. Well, RoboCop makes sense because I guess RoboCop looks like an action figure, so it's like somebody was like, "We're gonna make a cartoon."
Yeah,
but like Rambo got his own '80s action cartoon, and
I don't know. It's so weird though, because it's like they didn't have to do it. They didn't have to like tone it down because Terminator 2 is rated R, and there were toys from going for miles when that movie came out.
That's right.
I think it's just I would equate it to like the Jaws franchise of just diminishing returns, lower budgets. You're losing all the core talent that made the first one so good. And they don't know what to do with the character. Like I have, as I always do in my notes, just what I would have done differently. Like go more dystopian, make it more like make Detroit like basically New York and Escape from New York.
Right.
What this movie should be is Demolition Man.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Like opening sequence, RoboCop, and Lewis gets killed. and RoboCop is blamed for it, and he's basically mothballed. Jump
Yeah.
ahead a certain amount of time, and the Resistance
Wakes him up. Yes.
wakes him
Yeah.
up to fix him, because now it's like it's them, the remains of the cops, hot young doctor lady, versus the evil corporations on one side and the splatterpunks, the gangs
Right.
on the other.
And that was sort of something that irritated me, and I had forgotten all about it from when I had seen it the last time I watched this movie. Is the splatterpunks? They're like built up as this big threat, and they like
Yeah.
show up in that opening scene, and they're very Frank Miller in their dialogue. They're like, "Cyborgs eat bullets, man," and like like the punks in Dark Knight Returns. But then they disappear through the movie until the climax.
And again, that's that first 20 minutes. That seems like, okay, it still feels like this world.
Right.
And then at some point the movie just becomes a huge mess, and then robot ninjas show up.
Right, and that was like, man, what a missed opportunity. I in my notes, what I would have done if I were doing it is that the cyborg ninjas would be the Japanese answer to RoboCop. So they're dealing with sort of the similar problems that RoboCop would be, and I don't exactly know what you would do with them after that point, but I think it would be funny if that was the mirror, if they were a mirror image to RoboCop.
It would be funny, like if you saw like if other cities were trying to make RoboCops. And you saw like them like you had that weird. You have the little cartoon for Johnny Rehab.
Right.
Like, what if you saw more ads for like, RoboCop sells action figures, but you could also get Cyber Bobby from London.
Right.
It's
yeah. Well, or if OCP is trying to franchise out the RoboCop brand.
RoboCop Boston, RoboCop LA, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And for all the buildup, and the robot Otomo, the robot ninja, gets a lot of buildup. He spends a solid middle 45 minutes of this movie walking through Detroit trying to track down RoboCop.
Well, no, I mean he's actually trying to track down the Resistance, right? That's like what he's supposed to be doing, and then he finds the Resistance, and they have like a cellophane little thing, like. Laid out
put on a road map.
Put on a road map, and it's like, that raised so many questions for me. It's like, why did that person just have it on them, and then two, how did the ninja robot know that was what it was?
That felt very much like we need RoboCop to fight the Terminator.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like we need to do RoboCop versus Terminator, and then it's like, well, we don't really have the budget to make these action sequences work. Let's just make it a joke.
It is the face that Otomo makes when you hit him in the face and dislocate his jaw. Is it hilarious or terrifying? I can't decide. He turns into this like I don't even know how to describe it.
Well, it's like he gets punched. He gets punched by...
He gets hit with like a pipe.
A pipe, that's right. And it dislocates his jaw. And then his jaw is like sort of askew to the side. And then he has to reattach it.
But it's like he's making like this like that's that's the noise that face would make. Like
yeah.
And then they do it again in the finale, but it's also then like a weird mask over a stunt double so that you don't have to double the actor.
And there's a second one that just randomly shows up, and then they hack it and they kill each other, and that's the end of that.
Yeah.
Because RoboCop can't kill his own villains.
The villain's not even looking for him, remember?
You're right, yeah.
RoboCop is completely irrelevant to the plot of this movie.
No, I think, actually, if you removed RoboCop, I don't think you'd change much.
No, and he has no arc. There's that weird dream sequence where it's like
the cyber dream, where it's
cyber
like his
dream,
wife morphing into Lewis, morphing into the doctor,
into Dr. Lazarus.
Dr. Lazarus,
subtle. What was that? Like RoboCop's dreaming of all his girlfriends.
That was so weird. I had forgotten about that.
Yeah, it's like I would love to read. I'm guessing Frank Miller's original like outline for this.
So my understanding is that the script for RoboCop 2 was so enormous and like absurdly cost prohibitive that they they took a chunk of it and made RoboCop 2, and then they took parts of it and used it for RoboCop 3. I don't know if he came in and did another draft or anything like that, but his draft of RoboCop 2 and whatever was going to be RoboCop 3 were turned into comic books, and they are really bad.
Yeah. That said, if you can find it, read Frank Miller's RoboCop versus Terminator.
Oh, that is
Because
bananas. That is so fun. Yeah.
It's so awesome. It's like it's RoboCop and the Ed 209s versus, like, it doesn't have the Schwarzenegger Terminator in it, but it's got like them versus the Terminator endoskeletons. It's that vintage like Dark Knight Returns era Frank Miller art. It's pretty great.
Wait, did he do the art, or was it Walt Simonson?
Was it Walt Simonson?
I think it might have been. I'm looking it up.
You're looking it up. Our in-house researcher, Will Morey. When it comes to Frank Miller stuff, I leave it to Will.
Yeah. No, it was written by Frank Miller and drawn by Walt Simonson. So it's Walt Simonson art.
My mistake. So even better. Walt Simonson, like, he did probably all the definitive Thor of the 70s and 80s. Yeah, great artist. Yeah, if you could track it down, it's like, I don't know if it's in print, but it's like four issues. It's a fun read. It's probably online digitally somewhere.
I would hope.
They sell action figures from it. They might I hope it's in print.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It looks like you can get it on digitally. It looks like if you want to buy it on paperback or hardcover, it is about $150 to $200 on Amazon.
But that's the thing. It's another movie that frustrates me because I can see.
Yeah. You can see the good in it.
There's some corn in that poop. Like,
looking at it, like it's clear that this wasn't, such as it is. No one sort of thought that this was going to be the end of the RoboCop trilogy. I really think this was just Orion trying to do anything that would keep them solvent, and that's kind of what the movie feels like.
Yeah, it's very much Golden Globus with that fourth Superman.
Yeah, it's like we just need something that'll just keep us in the red.
And it kind of just killed the franchise, or at least it like took it away. It never was relevant again.
Well,
like you had a couple of TV shows. And then the remake.
Yeah, and the remake. One TV show which came out right after this came out. It was like a year or two after. It wasn't shortly, it wasn't a long time. But that was definitely geared towards children. That was definitely like a syndicated show for kids. Yeah,
they definitely had. I'm guessing they had designs on RoboCop becoming a big, family-friendly franchise.
Yeah, and then there was the weird like mini series that was like on Showtime in like the late 90s that I think is streaming on Amazon Prime. I've never watched it.
I've watched like clips on YouTube, and it just I mean, look, there are certain things that make RoboCop great, and I think one of those things is Peter Weller. The same way, like, you can't really do Freddy Krueger without Robert Englund, and I don't think you can do Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford. There's just certain actors that are meant to play that part.
Yeah, and then the remake is such a nothing movie. There's some good ideas there, but it's not.
The remake falls apart anytime it tries to be a RoboCop remake. All its interesting ideas are the original stuff, and it has nothing to do with RoboCop.
Yeah, and at least I've only seen it once, but it made me think that if you had retooled that script to be like you were saying that you wanted to do with this, of RoboCop waking up in the future, I think you might have more gas in that tank as opposed to just retreading the first movie over and over again.
And it, like RoboCop 3, the RoboCop remake lacks a good villain. Like there is like a crime boss in it, but he's such a non-entity. Yeah. And then Michael Keaton's kind of the bad guy, but like, again, for those of you that haven't seen, if you haven't seen RoboCop, why are you listening to a podcast about RoboCop 3? Go watch RoboCop. The villains are Ronnie Cox and Kurtwood Smith from That 70s Show as Clarence Bodiger, and he is so fucking good as that villain. Every line is just a gem.
He's having the time of his life. He is just having so much fun.
He's having fun, and his gang is having fun. Ray Wise is there. It's And then the sequel, RoboCop 2, has Tom Noonan
Right.
as Kane. I believe his name is
Yes,
Kane.
his name is Kane. He OCP wants to do another RoboCop, and they can't seem to get the prototypes right. And then some weirdo psychologist says that they need to find somebody who like has a zest for life, and they find this lunatic Charles Manson-esque drug dealer to put his brain in this like war machine, and of course the robot goes crazy.
Yeah. The
It's
best part
killing
is the
people.
RoboCop. The robot is called RoboCop 2.
Yeah.
He's the titular character.
Yeah.
Yeah, RoboCop 2 is I'd put it in that like Back to the Future Part 2 camp of it's a fun movie, but it's like 30 minutes too long and it has way too many ideas.
Yeah. Talk about a movie with like narrative cul-de-sacs. Like that's a movie that starts with one idea as its theme and then abandons it about 20 minutes in. And just,
Yeah.
like can't seem to figure out what it wants to do.
I feel like I recall it starts with like RoboCop's just kind of feeling bummed out.
Yeah, he's bummed out. He's like driving around stalking his ex-wife,
Right,
and like
right.
and then they, OCP, like she threatens to sue OCP, and then they have this weird scene where she meets him, and like and then once that happens, the movie forgets that entire narrative and goes on this whole tangent of RoboCop going out of commission and then getting reprogrammed into being a more family friendly character.
Right. Yes, he turns into like Dudley Do-Right, basically.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, see, that's
Which-
still more fun. This movie's like, I was kind of thinking at least it would be like a brisk ride, but it drags through a
It is
lot of it.
boring. Well, I mean, everyone's just sitting around like waiting for RoboCop to come back online, and then when RoboCop does, he's like, "I'm going to go get revenge for my dead partner." And then everyone's sitting around being like, "Where's RoboCop?" There's even a conversation where they're like, "Where's RoboCop?" And then one person's like, "I don't know, we could drive around and look for explosions."
Yeah, you can hear the writers high-fiving themselves with that line.
I mean, it's a good line, but it just feels so like everyone's just tired and annoyed.
It's got like little moments, little things that are kind of clever in it, or just like visually it looks like it belongs with the other two movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like it's not bad enough in that fun way, but it's not like a good enough dumb action movie to be enjoyable. It's everything that made the first two fun and good is, I think, like hopelessly watered down.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And if this was the direction they were going to take RoboCop as a movie series, it's honestly, I'm kind of glad that it stopped here.
Yeah, I don't know like where you'd go from here. I mean, RoboCop kind of has like one. He's a lot like Batman in a way, and sort of after you do the origin, you kind of need to like rethink what you're doing with RoboCop. And some of the Batman movies have figured this out, and the comic books obviously, but they basically just expand the supporting cast and make the supporting cast interesting, or have villains that sort of mirror Batman or whatever. But like, what do? You've run the first movie is he needs to re-engage his humanity. He's re-engaged his humanity, and so what's the story that you tell next? And then RoboCop 2 just basically says, well, we're going to do the first movie over again.
Yeah, and I think it's also like RoboCop 2 is definitely like, it's the man that is the important part of what makes RoboCop so special. Because when you put crazy crackhead Tom Noonan in there, he turns into a monster.
Right. Yeah, and then this one, I guess it would be like him becoming a resistance leader and like really rejecting the machine part of him. That should be like the emotional crux of the movie, and it just doesn't. It doesn't even bother to even explore that idea.
Yeah, I think it like touches on a little bit of like what makes a good cop a good cop. It is not smart or ambitious enough to tackle that thorny issue.
No, and a lot of the police stuff plays like very tone deaf in 2021.
Yeah, it's Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's not much to say about it. It's
No, I
like,
mean, and I guess looking at it as like a part three, sort of as we said, it just feels like a studio trying to remain solvent.
yeah, it's like we gotta get something out quick and dirty to keep the like
The
to like
lights
hang out,
on, yeah.
keep the lights on, and hang on to the rights.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so weird. And what's even weirder, I mean, I know that because of Orion's bankruptcy issues, and then they got acquired by MGM, and then MGM's bankruptcy issues. I know that the RoboCop rights have been weird, so it just, you'd think that through the rest of the 90s, as the DVD boom, as the home video boom happened, you'd think that RoboCop would become sort of a direct to video franchise, but
Yeah,
it just never really did.
yeah, you could see it be going like the Hellraiser route.
Or the Universal Soldier movies or
Oh
something like
yeah,
that,
yeah. I mean, RoboCop in space seems like a
A
no-brainer.
no-brainer. No brainer.
I don't know. It was not to be. And maybe
No.
that's for the best, because I think this movie's bad, but it doesn't like cheapen the first one. And
Yeah.
it's not like you have to watch this one. It's not Back to the Future where you need to
Right.
watch all three, or at least you need to watch 2 and 3 together. It's not Matrix Revolutions where it still
Right.
feels like an essential piece. You can
Right.
watch the first RoboCop and stop, and you're golden.
Yeah, and if you feel like you want more RoboCop, there's some more.
It's like the Predator franchise in that way. You've got one movie that's kind of perfect, and then you have like one sequel that's kind of a like an okay mess, like a fun mess, and then everything after that is actually, you gotta like Predators, like yeah, like everything else. Everything else is something you could put on a Sunday afternoon and be fine. It's
Yeah.
not gonna, but it's totally like weightless and watered down and lacks the things that made the first one special.
But if you spend any time on it, it just feels like a slog. And I hadn't seen it in probably a decade or more, and it just I had remembered it being more fun, and maybe just because I remember the opening 20 minutes and like the last 20 minutes when RoboCop's flying around, which is kind of cool.
This is another one that I saw a lot on Encore.
Yeah.
I saw it was the RoboCops and the Halloweens were on like perpetually rotating on Encore along with Terror in the Isles.
Yeah, I saw RoboCop 3 opening night in the theater, and then again taking my friends as my birthday movie. But
is that the first movie from these franchises that either of us has seen in the theater? Did you see Halloween H2O in the theater?
No, I didn't. I saw that on home video. Yeah, so I guess that this would be the first one.
Wow. Great.
All right. What an auspicious start. But, our podcast is about part threes, so you're never really going to get, like, unless you saw Return of the Jedi on its opening run, like, you're not going to get, like, a really great part three.
I don't know. Oh, I think there's some in there that you could be like, yeah, I saw that, and it was great.
Yeah.
I can't think of one. I was very high when I saw Iron Man 3, but I do love Iron Man 3.
Oh.
But yeah, as a part 3, this is, I think, another one that plays an interesting role in the pantheon of different types of part 3s. This is there, you get to a point in a franchise where it's either got to be bold and branch out. It's got a Tokyo drift, if you will. It's got to take a big swing, and it's got to bring in some new talent that's going to reinvigorate the franchise, or it's just going to kind of do everything that's been done before, but not as well. It's gonna It's gonna Jaws 3D. It's It's
gonna go out with a wet fart or
Yeah.
do something big.
And
A
just
big
be
swing.
glad, like, when you do it, it's not. It's if you're gonna do a wet fart part 3, make it this, because this is a C- movie. It's not an F. There's worse part 3s out there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'd say it's the equivalent to Blade Trinity, I think, in a lot of ways.
I 100% agree.
It's
actually, that franchise mirrors this one perfectly.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I had that in my notes, where it's kind of like it all kind of follows the same path. And similarly, it sidelines its hero in the third movie for a good chunk of it.
Yeah, and I think if this had sidelined the hero to do world building and create interesting characters, that would have been fine. Or even just like Blade Trinity, fun characters.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
there's no Ryan Reynolds in this movie. You know,
No,
there's
no.
no Parker Posey.
And CCH Pounder dies too early to like be having too much fun.
She dies
Yeah.
early. Stephen Root is he's not in it enough.
Yeah.
It's Mako's not in it nearly enough.
No. He just shows up on video, and then at the very end, he bows to RoboCop.
Yeah, well, because he respects him.
He respects
Because he
RoboCop.
has honor.
Or something.
Or something. Oh, so good in Conan the Barbarian.
So good in Conan
So
the
good.
Barbarian.
And Bradley Whitford's in it, and he's just such a piece of shit, and then out of nowhere is fired and immediately kills himself.
Oh, man. I mean, what you'd think is that this movie would build up to Dan O'Herlihy being the big bad. Like, that would be the final showdown, is having the old man be the big villain. But I'm guessing he either didn't... Maybe he was retired at that point, or...
He was still alive. He passed away in 2005. I'm guessing he just was like, no, I'm good. Because he probably he wouldn't have worked in Rip Torn's part.
No.
You wouldn't have seen him, you wouldn't see Dan O'Herlihy being all sniveling towards the Japanese guys or to McDaggett. Dan O'Herlihy he's Connell Cochran.
Yeah.
He's only ever played the corrupt heads of evil companies.
Well, what you do in that case is you'd make it so that there would be the big conflict with OCP would be between that and the Japanese company, and that would be like them trying to undermine each other and trying to like maneuver and stuff, and however you want to do that buyout plot. But that's how I think I would do it, is you'd make him the big bad, but you'd make it like OCP isn't about to go under. It's they're trying to like outplay the Japanese company.
Yeah, I think again, another a smarter script would have had more like of the corporate satire humor of the first two, and you would have had like there would have been a hostile takeover joke.
Right,
you know,
exactly,
somewhere in there. But in this one, the Japanese company taking over is just there for a couple of jokes at OCP, and it's an excuse to get a robot ninja in the movie, which I respect. I respect that blatant of an insertion of a robot ninja into the movie, but you got to do it right.
Right, you got to have the action scenes. You gotta have the action scenes. And not just like the ninja flipping around and knocking RoboCop over.
No, yeah, they knock RoboCop over a lot, but also I should note in one scene, it's 3 men can easily carry RoboCop.
That's true.
This character that can bend steel looks just like he weighs a fucking shit ton. They're easily carrying him into onto the stretcher.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Which makes me think it probably wasn't even an actor in there. It was just
the suit.
It was just the suit on like a mannequin.
Yeah. Oh my god.
I always forget Dan O'Herlihy's in The Last Starfighter.
Yeah, he's the last Starfighter, really.
Yeah, he's not the villain in The Last Starfighter.
No.
Yeah. Whatever happened to Lance Guest?
That's a good question. He's so good in that movie.
Yeah, he's definitely like one of those 80s guys. And we're not going to get to him, unfortunately, because he's in Halloween 2 and Jaws 4. So we're going to just miss him a little bit. But he's one of those guys that was always around.
Yeah. He's been doing stuff. It looks like a lot of sort of...
Is he on like a Hallmark series?
I don't know.
We have a brief word from our sponsor while we look up what Lance
Guest is up, because we don't have much to talk about RoboCop 3.
No, we don't. He showed up twice in 2010 on both Letterman and Fallon as Johnny Cash.
What is that? That is so weird.
I'm looking it up because that was
Evangeline Lilly, Sam Rockwell, $1 Million Quartet. Aaron
Well, that was
Kelly.
presumably the guests on that episode of Letterman.
Yeah.
All right. Johnny Cash, Lance Guest. I'm looking it up. Okay. There was a musical called $1 Million Quartet, and he played Johnny Cash in it.
Oh.
So that's why
okay.
he's it's like they presumably, like, I know, like, late night shows will have like a musical number,
They
like
had a musical number. Okay.
like when
that
they had
makes sense.
Spider-Man on Letterman. The
Right,
million
right,
the
right.
$1 Million
yeah.
Quartet was a recording of an impromptu jam session involving Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, and Johnny Cash. So I'm guessing it's a musical based on that.
Okay.
Yes, it was. We're learning so much.
We're learning so much about Lance Guest.
Think of all we could learn if we didn't waste time watching RoboCop 3.
I remember did you ever play the video game? God, the video game for RoboCop 3 was really hard.
I had the RoboCop versus Terminator Super NES game, and that was not.
That was also
fun.
really hard.
That was that like era of like just really hard tie-in games, which I suspect was they made them really hard so that you wouldn't notice how shitty they were.
How bad they were.
Like the Nintendo Batman, the '89 Batman game.
Oh my god, that one so hard, so annoying. Same with the Batman Returns. Yeah, same deal. It was just a straight up beat 'em up from Konami, but it was my god, it was impossible.
I couldn't get past the first level.
No.
The Disney tie-ins were really hard. The Lion King game was impossible. Lion King was
Yeah, I tried playing that with my nieces and nephews a couple of years ago, like when we were all visiting for Christmas, and they were like, "What? You played this?"
I remember the Aladdin one. That's the only one I remember. That one was pretty good. But my cousin made it to the end of Aladdin. I remember him fighting the snake.
I managed to. Back in the day, I managed to get to the end, the final boss, to Scar in The Lion King, but I had to do it using a cheat code. Like, I couldn't do it just playing the game.
Someone should do an open world game, but it is like it's Escape from New York.
That would be awesome. That would be so cool.
Yeah, just like take a GTA map and mod it so it's Federal Island Prison, New York. I'd play that.
I would play the shit out of that.
Like,
that Warriors game.
Yeah. There's not enough of that in RoboCop 3.
No.
You want some of that. You want at least it to feel like one of those Italian knockoffs of Escape from New York that came out, and you don't even get that feeling.
No, it just everyone just seems tired and annoyed.
I forgot to mention on the Halloween 4 episode that my Halloween 4 Blu-ray has some sort of audio problem. So for about 15 minutes in the middle of the movie, the audio is slightly out of sync.
Oh God. Just
slightly, just enough that it suddenly stops feeling like an American movie and starts feeling like a shitty Italian slasher knockoff that Donald Pleasance agreed to star in.
Of course, would be in anyway.
Yeah, he'd still be in it. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh man. Well, I'm glad we can put this behind us. It was painless, but deeply unfulfilling. So we're gonna do Matrix Revolutions in the immediate future, and honestly, I think our next one's probably gonna be Spider-Man 3. Yeah. If you want to do, which might seem like a masterpiece after this one.
Yeah. Well, but I think there's actually a lot more to talk about with Spider-Man 3, because I think it represents an inflection point for Hollywood blockbusters and superhero movies in general, and we'll talk about that next week.
Next week. Get ready for emo hair Tobey Maguire. And then after that, it's my turn to pick.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm excited. I have a lot of options here. And I'm like, I'm trying to resist going with all the really bad ones out of the gate, so we don't have to then watch the last thing you want to do is have to watch a bunch of good movies in a row. Right. So I'm gonna go with I'm thinking the next one. Let's watch Day of the Dead.
Oh, I've never seen that. That's great.
You've never seen Day of the Dead? Okay.
No, I've never seen Day of the Dead.
All right, that's great. That's a good one. It's underrated. I think it's more appreciated now than it's been in past years. possibly because it's the easiest one to get a hold of, because no one can find Dawn of the Dead on DVD.
Right.
But yeah, that'll be our next one after we get Spider-Man and The Matrix out of the way.
I think that sounds great.
Yeah, that'll be fun. We'll a little more 80s cheese for you, because Lord knows there's going to be a lot of that. So, Will, would you recommend RoboCop 3?
I would not recommend RoboCop 3. I think only watch RoboCop 3 if you just want more RoboCop. Watch the first one, and the other two you can take or leave. But if you want more RoboCop 3 is a perfectly acceptable way to spend an hour and 45 minutes. But I wouldn't go out of your way to watch it.
No, I wouldn't. It's the worst of the 4 RoboCops, and there's no shortage of RoboCop content. But if you haven't seen the first RoboCop, go see it.
You absolutely have to see it.
Absolutely. Yeah. We here at Podcast Part 3, it is a Hall of Fame movie for us. It's better than any movie we've actually spent an hour talking about by a country mile.
That's right.
Yeah. Will, as always, a pleasure.
Always good to talk to you, Sam.
Yeah.
So these are fun talks.
These are fun talks. I don't know when we're banking a bunch of episodes because I'm slow to edit. So if you haven't had a Merry Christmas yet, have one. And if you have had a Merry Christmas, I'm happy for you.
Happy holidays. I guess technically RoboCop 3 is a Christmas movie. They keep talking about Christmas, but it never really figures into anything.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I wrote it in my notes. When he goes to get the map from the Pennzoil station, he's listening. Yeah. The guy's listening to Blue Christmas by Elvis, but I kind of missed all the other Christmas references. So I was
There's only
this,
one or two. Yeah.
Is this guy one of those weird people that likes to listen to Christmas music in the rest of the year? Or was it just an Elvis playlist that he had?
Yeah, no, it was. You can when they go in the donut shop at the beginning, they're playing Christmas music.
Oh yeah,
it's decorated for Christmas, and then never brought up ever again.
Yeah, and it's not winter. No one's dressed like winter style.
Yeah,
there's no snow. It's Detroit.
Yeah, I would think that Detroit in Christmas time is pretty wintry.
And if you can't afford fake snow, make a global warming reference. That's right. This is the kind of movie this is. If only we'd been there. We could have been the Fred Decker and Shane Black of their time.
And then we could make the Predator.
Yeah. Oh, no. I don't want to do that. Another one, thankfully, we're going to bypass. We're going to talk. Yeah. We'll be talking about Predators.
Well, once we do part 4, the part 4 podcast, then we'll talk about the Predator.
Right. Have fun. You have fun with that podcast part 4, where you talk about Halloween 4 again, and Halloween 5, and Halloween Resurrection. And next year, you can talk about Halloween Ends.
There you go.
You would launch podcast part 4 just as an excuse to talk about Matrix Resurrections.
Probably.
And we can just do that. That can be my Christmas gift to you. That's another one where you're going to have lots of thoughts, I'm sure.
Oh, I've got lots of things to say about the Matrix, and I'll try to keep my Matrix Reloaded rant short.
I mean, rant makes it sound like you hate it. And this is
no.
You're basically
a defense. Yeah, I'll keep my Matrix Reloaded defense short.
It's it's gonna be your Atticus Finch monologue about just upbeat polyphonic spree song about Matrix Reloaded. Yes, and I will in turn keep my snark to a minimum.
All right, very good.
All right, everyone. Until next time, when we watch Spider-Man dance, hold your loved ones close. Watch RoboCop if you haven't. Will, anything to add?
What do I have here? No, I thought I have a good line. I don't have a good line out. Adios. Have a good night.
Oh, that's lovely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Good night, everybody.